Hello, and welcome back to the Daibase. For this one, we'll be taking this Game Boy Advance up a notch by adding mods and giving it a new shell. As you can see, it's got plenty of scuff marks on the shell and lens, alongside yellowing on the plastic there, but first let's see if it even powers on. With batteries installed, let's start it up. There's that crisp nostalgia coming in nice and clear. Now that we know what works, let's see if it'll play a game with Pokemon Fire Red. Ooh. Okay, first try, Nintendo logo is all scrambled, but with all the scratches, it's hard to make it out on the camera. But this is the age of having to blow in them like a harmonica, so let's reseat it and see if it was just a bad connection. After that, it's all good, but we just gotta make sure the pins are nice and clean when I get down to it. But now that we know it works, let's start the teardown. There are 6 screws to remove on the back here. Removing the batteries and cover reveals another screw, so that makes 7 in total. With them all removed, we can get into the internals. Getting a better look here and also flipping the power switch out, it just rests here, so we can set that aside. Go ahead and get out the yellow side panels, and I was gonna take the triggers out later, but I didn't realize they were just sitting in there, so it kind of popped out. To remove the screen ribbon, just gotta pull up these tabs till they are fully opened and pull it out. Now the board comes up with just these 2 screws, though usually there are 3, it kinda just depends on the model. With those out, it can just come up since nothing's holding it down. Now we can just take a look at the other side of the board as well as the charging port and game slot. Let's keep it going by getting the buttons and pads out. I don't know if it's just me, but how the D-pad separates from the rubber pad just doesn't look right. I'm gonna censor it. Luckily the rest just comes out, like the start and select button, looking like a used Q-tip. Ugh. Lastly, the A and B buttons and the clear indicator piece for power. Now it's just getting the screen out. Let's see what's the best way to go about doing this. I feel like right there, but the guide I followed pried right here, so I guess I'll give it a shot. Ooh, that's not good. And I instantly regret it. I have an IPS screen to add, so it's not the worst, but I would have liked to keep the screen. Let's go with my initial idea of pulling back here. Yeah, this is working much better. Alternatively, I've seen others use heat for the adhesive or even bending the shell back and forth, but that kind of makes me nervous. Maybe in the future. With enough prying, it came out fine enough, but I have to go hang my head in shame on this one. Here's even a cracked piece from the side panel, but this is what the channel's all about. Gotta make mistakes to learn for the future. Moving on, our next focus is to replace this speaker. While there isn't anything severely wrong with it, I'm just gonna replace it with a new one for future-proofing. The new one being from FunnyPlaying. Unlike the simple drop-in version of the SP, the speaker is soldered to the board right here, so let's just maneuver it to give me the easiest time when it comes to putting it in. With all the tools here, add flux to help the solder flow. I'm just going to touch up the points with some fresh solder to make it easier to remove. Now it's just heating the point and patiently waiting for it to melt so you can pull the wire out, just like that. With the speaker removed, I'm gonna clean it up a bit and then finish it off with some IPA. Now we have the new speaker, just make sure it's positioned correctly and heat up the point again, this time trying to be careful to shove it in the solder. Flipping it over, I'm gonna touch it up by adding some more solder just to make sure there's a solid connection. Here's what it should look like when it's done. Now we'll move on to the new shell from FunnyPlaying as well. It's got a nice translucent green color that is right up my alley. Comes with all the screws you need, just in case some get lost in translation. Here is a side-by-side with the previous shell, the front half here, and the back half as well. It even has the battery contacts pre-installed, so that's nice. Pair along with it, we have the aforementioned IPS screen. This bracket helps for stability, cables, and the board itself, and that clean screen. I went with the teal coloring on the Advance logo to match the shell. Laying it down here, it has the 1 ribbon connector that goes along the board. The kit comes with 2 cables due to the difference with the boards depending on your edition. You can tell that a couple of ways. Most easily under the screen connector, it has 32, which signifies it has 32 pins instead of the 40 that other boards have. 3 wires come included to allow for the screen brightness to be changed without the touch sensor. For now, you just have to look at the 2 connector ribbons and select the 32 or 40 depending on your board. Because mine is 32, I'll use this one. Here's a closer look at the board itself, but to connect it, line it up like so, and pull up the orange locking tab as this one goes to the screen. It's a bit weird to maneuver the ribbon in, but just wrangle it however works best and get it seated. Setting it in place like so makes it easy to just flip over into position. Now grab the cable for the board and set it in as well. Lift the black tab up like before and make sure the gold lettering is facing up and set it too. Now in a messy spaghetti, just try to sandwich it together so you can connect it to the board and make sure everything is working properly. Go ahead and grab the bottom shell and lay the board in there so you can plug in some batteries to test it. I had to use a bit of force to set it in, but it worked out fine. Just try to do it as cleanly as you can while setting it up. You don't need the game in, but I figured why not. Turning it on, and nothing. Well, Handhelds are nothing if not finicky, so let's try the easy option and try rolling the batteries to make sure they have a good connection. Oop, I know that nostalgic jingle again. Luckily, I didn't mess up. So that's a sigh of relief. As a bonus, we get to hear the audio too, making sure that works. But the image is super crisp. With all that working, we can move on to the rest of it. The next part is optional, but it'll allow you to control the brightness with buttons, but it does require soldering, so do it at your own risk. Starting out though, we have these 3 pins on the connector, indicating R, L, and S. They all need a wire and go to a specific pad on the board. This one for R, this one for L, and lastly for S. Now to add some solder to the points, start off with flux. Flux is our friend. So now you just tin the pads like so, just maybe with less shaky hands than mine. Now onto the board, the pin exactly is this here, TP8. Go ahead and tin up the pad here as well, but I had a bit of trouble with these. This was a new iron, so I was trying to get the hang of it and ended up making it much messier than I would have liked. Alright, flipping it around so I can get a better angle and then immediately start blocking it with my head. Excellent camera work on my part. But the wire is connected, so to make it look nice and fancy, I'm going to route it through the legs of the CPU chip. Just got to slide it through and get it into a good position to solder it. Now it's just rinse and repeat with flux and soldering it down. Next up is L, and that goes on TP9. So flux it up and get it tinned up and soldered too. This one will route through the left side of the CPU and do the same as R. Lastly is S, and that goes with TP2. This one was definitely the easiest in my opinion, with it not being a through hole like the other two, but not like you can see it or anything. This one gets routed the same as L, just a little tighter this time, but with plenty of room still. And that's the IPS screen all set up. Now to adjust the wires into a better position, it also depends if you have a custom shell or not, if you need to trim down the shell as it'll pinch the wires. Now we can give it another try to make sure we didn't mess up. Go ahead and lay the screen in, and since we're getting close to the end, we can set it in place by removing the tape from the back to help the board stick to the screen. To keep the bottom from popping up, I'll just add some extra heat tape. Now we can flip the board into place. As this is a new shell, the port for the charger needs to be freed from this tab here. So just grab some flush cutters. For me, I'm using a pair from my Gundam kit, and clip it out. There's a bit left over, so I'm going to try to file it down without roughing the plastic too much. Get any bits with some IPA, then set the touch sensor into place. You kind of have to bend it back into place so it'll stick on the shell next to the charging port. That seems good enough. Now we can finish this up. Is what I would say if I didn't decide to get this LED kit here, as there were some parts I needed. This is a RetroGlow LED kit I got from HandHeldLegends. It comes as this whole unit, and you have to cut it to divide it across the board. So get back out the flush cutters and cut on the dotted black lines until you eventually get it into 3 pieces. Going to the board, the largest piece coincides with the left half of the board with some points to tack down. The next biggest goes to the right, lining with the button plates. And lastly, this piece connects the two together. Because I did this after planing it out, I have to go back and remove the wires. Now with the LED kit in place, keep it down with some heat tape so it stays in position. There are 3 gold rings around the circles you have to solder down. That being this one here, to the left of that one, and the other where the select wire goes. So just add your flux and try to get a solid connection. You'll also have to set in the ground plane here, which will require a decent bit to connect. Just gonna add some flux to try to pretty it up, and with the last one done, we can move on to the other side. Just gonna move the speaker out of the way just to make it easier. So once again, get it in place and then add the heat tape. This time I'll do the big point first, which is for 3.3 volts. After that, it's just the 1 gold ring on this side up at the top here. Alright, now we just connect the 2 by lining up the 3 pins on both sides. Could have used the tape, but it was big enough to hold while fluxing it and tacking it down. Just had to do a bit more maneuvering to get it back in place. It would have been better to tack down on the other side before continuing, but in my case it didn't really matter. But it's always a better practice. Okay, with it all solidly in place, we can test it out. Same as before, carefully put it in the bottom shell so you can put batteries in and be amazed that the power switch was turned on enough to go on, and it just works. So now we have to get the wires back in. Once again, not necessary, and since I already showed it before, I'm just gonna speed through this part. I will say it's much harder to get the wires to stick this time. I'll definitely have to get them through the hole first to hopefully have a better effect. But with those done, we can move on to the final bit, which is installing a battery mod. Now it comes with a special back because this also gives the ability to charge using USB-C. This as well is from FunnyPlaying and comes nicely assembled. The only part you have to add is this copper pad to help transfer heat. Peel the blue back off and stick it onto the gold area like so. To put it in the shell, you do have to remove the battery contacts here for it to fit, which is easy enough to just pry up. The last bit to do is to take the wire and plug it into the battery itself. It's a little finicky with the size, but not too bad overall. The wire itself is a bit long, but can be hidden where the battery contacts were. Just gotta wrestle with it to get it seated well enough without pinching it. With that situated, getting the battery cover into place is pretty tight. Not sure if it's just meant to be like that, or the board isn't 100% seated, but the USB slot lines up, so it must be alright. Also looking at it now, the color isn't right, but I think that's on me. Either way, now we can wrap this up by setting the buttons in place. Those being these neat glow-in-the-dark buttons I got from HandHeldLegends. Let me go ahead and charge them up with some light to show you the effects. Darkness. Now with the lights off, you can really see the ghostly teal. Super neat. And just like that, back to normal.
Life, death, life, death, life, death, life, death, life.
Enough of the novelty, but it's pretty straightforward here on. Just gotta line them up with their slots. To go along with those, I have some clear rubber pads to hopefully complement the glow. Don't forget the charge indicator with the clear piece resting right here. Now we can align the screen holder into place, just gotta pull the pads up a little bit. With it well enough in place, just go ahead and flip the board over. Now with the L and R triggers, they kind of just slot in and lazily sit in there. Lastly is the side panel, that just rests on both sides of the shell. The one with the indent inward is meant to go on the right side of the shell as shown. Finally the power switch. Now we just have to get the 3 screws on the board and we can close her up. I'm not sure if it's just my board or the shell. Maybe I didn't set it in completely like I said, but I struggled getting a nice seal. With the screws in, it helped, but I still feel a bit about it. Don't forget the back screw in the battery compartment, but last thing to do is get the battery seated and covered. Getting a look all around, and I think it turned out really well visually. Now for the final time, will it work? Yes it will. There's the touch sensor, so let's make sure it's good. It channels through 15 brightness levels and looks really clean. But that's the before and after of this modded GBA. Thanks for watching. This is DieFixer, shutting down.